What I'm about to say is nuts. What if time doesn't behave normally on the ranch? That is, what if it's stretched or compressed or both? That ticks a lot of boxes in terms of crazy stuff that I have seen with my gear over the years.
Holy mackerel, that can't be aircraft. There actually is a large unidentified object circling the Earth at incredible speed.
Naturally, we are very curious to know where it is you come from.
On Skinwalker Ranch, there's probably no one that has a more unique view of what's going on in the sky, underground, and all around. And that would be Pete Kelsey, who joins us today. Welcome, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. So, did Skinwalker Ranch find you, or did you find Skinwalker Ranch?
I actually got the call, pardon me, I got the call from Prometheus, the production company. But originally it was the Oak Island guys from Prometheus, and we had a call, and I guess I didn't have a good day or wasn't a good fit for that. And they said, now that we know what you do and how you do it, have you ever heard of Skinwalker Ranch? And to my embarrassment, I said, no, I haven't.
So you hadn't heard of the ranch before?
Never. No. In fact, once they told me about it and what was going on, in all honesty, I was full-blown, eye-rolling skeptic. I thought, oh my God, I'll be out of there in 24 hours. They'll say, this isn't a good fit. You're just not for us, or something like that. And 6 years later, still there.
So it's been 6 years for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you show up at the ranch, like I'm just picturing you coming with your equipment and your thermos and your lunchbox, and were you? What was the first thing that happened that registered with you that there may be something to this?
Let's see. The very first thing, I had a large, rather expensive drone up in the air. Eric and I were flying a photogrammetry mission. We were set up in the driveway. The drone was in the air, and I'm flying, and I'm, legally I have to keep my eyes on the drone. So I'm watching the bird, and there's this, and it's broad daylight, and there's this bright light in the sky to the west. And, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this, but my first thought was, look, it's got to be the sun glinting off the windscreen of a commercial aircraft, something like that. But it wasn't moving. And hey, Eric, do you see that? Oh yeah. And he writes it down, time of day, where we are, all that stuff. And it remained for a while, and then I lost control of my drone. So it was up flying a fully autonomous mission, this sort of lawnmower pattern, and it was time to bring it back to do a battery swap. So I tried to take over, and I can't. And that's not good. This is a really expensive asset up there, and I'm trying to figure things out, and it will not respond to anything I'm doing. It goes into an orbit and until the batteries run dry, and then crashes.
Mm.
And that was not a good day. A lot of bad language. But then it kept. Well, the next sort of chapter of the story was the data was actually intact on the drone. So I processed the data, and there is this. The ranch is essentially flat with the exception of the mesa, right? And, the driveway there to the command center, heading out west, with the exception that mesa is flat. Well, in this model is about a 30-degree bend in the data. And to this day, and this is 6 years ago, I still can't explain it. Neither can the folks I work with who make the software, who've been doing photogrammetry longer than I have. Nobody's got a good answer for it. The closest explanation, which remains top of mind for me now 6 years later, is GPS. And the reason why is that every photograph, and there are thousands of them that the drone takes when it's in the air, every photograph is geotagged. That just means the lat long elevation is tagged in each photo. That's how they know where they are to stitch themselves together into a model. And that made sense to me. I mean, that conversation didn't come up for a few weeks, but that actually made sense. It's like, okay, at that bend, where the model is level, where the topography actually looks like it does, everything's cool. But at that bend, I wonder if it could be that something went screwy with GPS as it was geotagging those images during the flight. But the drone becoming unresponsive, no idea. It was just really frustrating, really expensive, but frankly, it set the hook for me. It led to, look, I need some answers. I need to understand what's going on here, because nobody has an answer. So me being stubborn, sorry, long story, but here we are 6 years later, and still, frankly, chasing, GPS remains, as I said, top of mind for Eric, myself, Travis, all the guys, that's always like, what about GPS? So.
No, I appreciate that. And I get it. It happened. How long after you arrived at the ranch did that incident happen?
Oh, that was day one.
Okay, so you came in rolling your eyes and you left going, well, my drone's crashed. That's expensive, but there's something to this.
Yeah, and, a bright light, which, today, having seen more of these things, that would fall into the orb sort of narrative. I can't explain what that was. If that was an aircraft, it should have been moving, unless, what are the odds it's coming straight at me? I mean, but you would have been able to, we would have been able to detect motion if it was something like that as well. So the whole thing was just like, I need to get my head around this, because it's the journey from skeptic to, okay, that was crazy, to now to needing answers, like millions of people now who watch the show. We all want the same thing, which is just that, which, what's going on here. To lately, frankly, I've become kind of pissed off. It's like,
how so?
Because it's so frustrating, right? These guys are really smart. They're committed. A lot of thought goes into the experiments. And it seems like we'll come up with something, a really good idea. Well, let's try X, Y, or Z. Hey, that's great. Yeah, let's try it, and we'll do it. Something strange happens, but it leads to more questions rather than answers.
Sure.
And oh gosh, it can really, really try my patience, and the other guys too. And it's why for many years now, I've told other people, the third party expert crowd like I am, check your ego at the gate, because this place is going to humble you. I can pretty much guarantee you that, and I've watched it happen.
Sure.
A couple of times with other folks.
So with your technology that you specialize in, it's without a dissertation, LiDAR, ground penetrating radar, drones. What can you describe a little bit about each as far as what they do, and then associated with it, what are some of the anomalies that seem to keep coming up with each of those?
Sure. So LiDAR is laser-based. That's the L in LiDAR. The laser is infrared that you can't see. So when any of the LiDAR scanners are running, and there's a lot of different kinds of LiDAR. So we're using drone-based LiDAR, terrestrial laser scanning, but that's LiDAR. We use the SLAM scanner a lot. SLAM is just LiDAR. Anyway, it's just at hundreds of thousands to millions of times per second, it's sending out laser beams. And anything the laser interacts with, touches, if you will, we get a point. And that point gets an XYZ coordinate. It all happens at the speed of light. It's really cool. In the drone-based LiDAR, well, actually in all three now, there's a GPS component as well. So the XYZ point that's generated is tied to the ground, which is really helpful. But so in terms of what we've seen with that technology, they're known as returns, these points that are collected millions of times per second. We've seen returns 2x, way out there in the sky, 2x or more beyond the range of the scanner. How does that happen? It's not possible. It's physics, right? And oh, by the way, Travis Taylor, who is an optical physicist, and Eric Bard, who is a physicist, we're all just going, that doesn't make any sense at all. And that's happened a lot. The other truly strange returns are underground.
Yeah.
And that's impossible because it's light. A laser can't see through dirt and bedrock, and it's just not possible. So that remains enigmatic. Photogrammetry, we talked a little bit about. That's just a series of pictures can be stitched together into a beautiful 3D model. That can be done from the drone, from the ground, from me with my iPhone. I mean, anything, any camera. And we talked about, the bend and the topography. I think the one that people probably know the best is the spire of data we got in the Eastfield Canyon some years back. That remains a total mystery, and we've tried to repeat it. I mean, like Caleb and I have gone out there. I've been out there by myself, same gear, same flight plans, same everything, and trying to make that happen again to try to figure out what's going on. And we haven't been able to. What else? We've used, it's called multispectral imagery. You might hear me say MSI, just multispectral. That is a camera that does standard red, green, blue, but also does 2 bands of infrared. It's used typically in agriculture, and it measures levels of chlorophyll in green plants, so it can tell you how your crops are doing. Say if you're a farmer, it's very cool. But it turns out that it's an incredible tool for archaeology because it can show you where people have been digging. The plants will refract light differently in soil that's been disturbed versus soil that hasn't been. So I think it's referred to as the 5 lines. There was an episode we did about that. You'll see more with multispectral coming up because now I know you've spoken with Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, finally have an archaeologist, which is so cool because, like I said, it dovetails really nicely with what I know how to do. You mentioned GPR. That's my good buddy Jan. Jan's been on the show a couple times. He's world class GPR expert, geophysicist, PhD, and just a great guy. GPR uses radar, which is radio, to look underground, and oh my gosh, the returns Jan have found remain enigmatic as well. There are masses. I think the first one was in the road by Homestead 2. I hope I have that right. And then the one in the Mesa, which the guys have been chasing for a couple of years now. It's really, really interesting. And again, Jan is actually a great example of what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Watching somebody come to the ranch and watch the guys explain to them, well, this is Skinwalker Ranch. Have you ever heard of it? No. Well, here's what goes on. And you watch, I will never forget watching Jan go through what I went through, which is I'll be out here in 24 hours. Just the eye-rolling skeptic. This has to be nonsense. And we filmed it, but it never aired. I remember saying to him with the cameras rolling, it's like, we're going to have this conversation in a couple of days and let's see what's changed. And wow. So Jan's gone through that. He's been back a bunch of times. So between Jan and I, anything above ground, anything below ground, anything airborne, we've used drones, we've used the helicopter, and I can't give too much away, but what connects, say, Jan's data and mine together is GPS. So we can actually integrate the 2 data sets into a single model. So then you can see above, below. It's really excited about that. And to be able to bring that to the audience, and, it's a whole new sort of impossible look at Skinwalker Ranch because, you can orbit the data and wow, now we're underground and well, now we're, 1,000 feet in the air. It's, and of course, Eric is managing all this. He is the keeper of the keys in terms of all of this data, and how he is making sense of this data is absolutely paramount. So, guys like Jan and I are like, gosh, what are we going to do next? They call it kicking the hornet's nest. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next kick?
So in my mind, I see like your roundtable discussions afterwards, and what we hear is a part of that. What we don't hear is you, Jan, Eric, a whole litany of other people that continue to return to the ranch that have probably entered the same way, where they're like, all right, let's play along, and then their equipment fails in ways that it never had failed before. They get returns that they've never seen anywhere else before, and it's basically impossible, but they're saying, well, it just happened. So it is possible. How do we make sense of it? I'm just picturing when the cameras aren't rolling And through year in, year out, the conversations you, Jan, Eric, the conversations you have with each other, is there any consensus between everybody as to, and this is probably an individual question, I'll ask you first, what do you think the possibilities are that you're dealing with?
Yeah, wow. I wish I knew. So my answer, purely, theoretical. Does it carry some confirmation bias? Yes.
Sure.
Where I can speak for the rest of the guys is, are we all aware of that, being at play? Confirmation bias, whatever it is, we desperately try to follow the scientific method. I speaking for myself,
yeah.
I won't speak for anybody else. If that wasn't the MO there, I wouldn't be there, because I am a no nonsense kind of guy.
Yeah.
So what keeps me up at night, right? I've already mentioned, no, I haven't. It's GPS. Well, what makes GPS work? I remember a land surveyor years and years ago, early in my career, telling me this. It's like, Pete, what makes GPS work is a clock, is the measurement of time. It's the time from your phone, your car, your airplane, whatever your GPS receiver is, to the satellites and back. And you need to have at least 3, satellites triangulation to get a good fix on where you are. And so time. And this is it's even hard for me to bring this up, because it is so out there. It is so beyond, our current understanding of physics. And that I can say that as a non-physicist. I mean, what I'm about to say is nuts, but what if? Okay. So what if time doesn't behave normally on the ranch? That is, what if it's stretched or compressed or both? That ticks a lot of boxes in terms of crazy stuff that I have seen with my gear over the years. It is an explanation that fits well enough that you have to go, wow, okay, beware of confirmation bias. Keep the science whole. There are millions of people now, paying attention to this. This has to be credible, et cetera, et cetera. But wow, that would explain returns 2x beyond the range of my scanners, right?
Yeah.
Time, because it meant the speed of light of the laser beam going out and coming back. Well, if time was stretched, and at the speed of light, we're talking milliseconds, that could explain why there are returns way out there that, shouldn't be there. And the same with underground.
Yeah.
Why do batteries die? In some instances, you're at 100%, 90 seconds later, you're at 0. Time, that sort of ticks that. Okay, that's a good fit. What else am I forgetting? My very first, drone incident I had there, the bend in the data, GPS. What if time was off and it pushed, the location of those photos somewhere where they actually weren't? So I'll take a breath. I've described it as my white whale. That's Moby Dick to me. I've got to get my head around that. And you can imagine some of the reactions that, I've had to that when I'm talking with the manufacturers who make the drones I use, or the software for the post-processing. They're like, man, we got to have you drug tested or something. And I'm like, come to the ranch, or I'll show you the data. You can't make this up. The guys love to say that. You know, if we were going to make something up, it wouldn't be this. I mean, you can't fake the data results that I've got, that Jan has got, and let's even throw in Chris. I mean, he's just found some stuff that, you know, wow. How do you pull a nickel from 1964 out of a mesa, which is covered with, tens, if not hundreds of millions of years of geology? It's just what? So.
No, I actually love that perspective, because I think there was one show where they actually showed like there was a difference in one of the instruments or the clock or something by maybe a second, right? And that was like a tangible peek at the possibility that maybe we're dealing with some form of time manipulation, which given everything that's been claimed, given everything that's been even seen by people like that, is it really that far-fetched? Because it's got to be something. And like you said, it would explain a lot more than it wouldn't explain if that was true.
Yeah. I'll even, here I go. Okay.
Go. Let it rip.
Oh my God. When, the guys pulled that corpse out of the creek, and then, Ben does his biology stuff. And hey, guys, this is a dire wolf that's been extinct for 14,000 years. What? What? Right? And the debunkers start circling, sure. Right? And it would take a lot of abuse, but the science is science. But anyway, there's a nice fit if there's some kind of a time anomaly thing going on for that, right?
Right.
The other one I'm remembering is we use the helicopter a lot.
Yeah.
Well, as much as time and budget will allow. That's FAA certified, instrumentation. It has to be inspected all the time. This is commercial piloted aircraft. And it's aired in the show in more than once. I think, hey, the helicopter thinks it's 6 miles from where we really are. That's GPS. But frankly, for me, because I spend I'm a FAA certified drone pilot, I have to understand air traffic control and aeronautical charts and safety and da-da-da-da-da. Commercial aircraft not knowing where it is, that is dangerous. I mean, really dangerous. So anyway, the list goes on and on and on. So that's my white whale. I'm stuck on, or anyway, that's always like right here in my ear. It's like, what about time? What about time? Let's, keep an eye on that.
What I didn't know, and you explained, was how GPS is based on time. Mm-hmm. And then now I can see, and probably some of the viewers too that aren't technical, when we watch the shows and the GPS readings are underground, that's impossible. There's missing chunks of GPS data on a straight flight path. And so when you say GPS is one of the keys, and you guys are going to, when the next season comes out, you'll be, more to be revealed, and how you're overlapping that with some of Jan's stuff. It makes sense to me now. I know what to look for. I guess it's a good indicator of what to look for. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's, boy, is it compelling, right? So that, and that sort of feeds that fire in me. I was talking about a little while ago. I've gone from skeptic to, frustrated, to pissed off to, now it's almost like obsession. It's like, because no one can give me a good answer.
Yeah.
Now it's become, okay, I need an answer. It's almost sort of visceral.
Sure.
And how lucky am I is that for the most part, either through the show itself or through the insider program, I mean, Brandon just insists that we're going to expose as much of this as we can, and that makes me extraordinarily lucky, because what if this was some black government thing, and we're all like,
Right.
can't talk about anything, so it's the kimono is open. It's like, come with us if you dare. Some of it is going to really mess with your mind, your soul, whatever. It's frustrating. It's fascinating. And yeah, a bit obsessive.
It's amazing. So I'm going to pivot a little bit here. Like, we've talked about kind of your skill set and the technology you bring to the table, and all of this crazy anomalous results you've gotten from your technology, and then even the theory of maybe what's causing these results. Set technology aside, you've been out there now 6 years?
Yes.
Okay. In those 6 years, without the technology piece, what else have you experienced just being around the ranch and maybe even off the ranch? Because I've talked to some people that were on the ranch and experienced some things they hadn't before off the ranch. Any non-technical related phenomenon that you've experienced on the ranch or off the ranch?
Yeah, I think they call that the hitchhiker effect.
Yeah.
It's the short answer is no.
Okay.
Nothing odd has happened to me off the ranch, which half of me is thank you. I don't need that in my life. But there's another part of me that's sort of frustrated by that. It's like, well, what about me? It's funny because I've actually been we've done a lot of off-season work, when we're not filming. Brandon's great about that. He's like, no, the work goes on regardless of the show. And, I've been out there by myself and screaming at no one, saying, I'm right here. If you want to have a conversation, do you want to interact? Here I am. No response, which is frustrating.
Sure.
The thing that comes to mind, I think this aired last year. We were doing a helicopter experiment, and wow, this bright light went right by me, because I'm out on the skid, or actually, no, I was sitting on the deck. My feet were on the skid, and I'm looking straight out the door. The door's open, and we're eastbound, and the Mesa's going by, and I've got my scanner running, and this bright light, I don't know, grapefruit softball size, went right past me. And I'm on the comms. I'm like, Cameron, did you just see what I just saw? And I'm pretty sure he did, because I was, what in the world is that? And, no idea. And of course, that's happened before, but that one was mine, if you will.
Right.
I saw it with my Mark I eyeballs, and wow, that was that. So that, and it's not in the data, no technology. It's just something I saw that was, I can't explain, and I'd really like to know what it is and what's going on and why there, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the one that comes to mind. It also makes me think something that I think everyone, again, I don't want to speak for everyone, I'll speak for myself. It occurred to me a couple months ago that part of this experience is, what are you going to do? How will you react? What are you going to do when you see something that you cannot explain? And it's a really interesting, for me anyway, sort of train of thought to just sort of think about that. And, then when it happens, it's it can be really challenging, right? Because, I think if there was a shrink on, here with us, they'd say, well, there's the divine, there's scientific, there's, whatever. There's some obvious places to go, but keeping it more sort of general, it's like, I'd be willing to bet that for a lot of us, again, only speaking for myself, it's like, what are you going to do when you're confronted with something like that? Whether it's data I can't explain or an orb flying by me, what are you going to do, right? And how will you react? Maybe that's a better way to put it. And there's something great about that too. It can be frustrating. I can get really pissed, but at the end of the day, it's extremely humbling. And that comes back to that comment I've been telling people a long time. It's like, check your ego at the gate, because this place is going to humble you. It's going to happen.
When I was talking to Chris Roberts, your archaeologist, he made a comment that kind of ties into what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And he said, and it was his observation, right? Only speaking for himself, but what he felt was people that come out there, whether it's film crew, whether it's technologists like yourself, an archaeologist, security, he said the implication to him is each of us are going to be shown what we're going to be shown, and maybe it's almost based off of Chris is an archaeologist, so he gets shown a nickel in the mesa. Like how can it be in there? How can ceramic that can reconstitute and disintegrate and reconstitute on its own be in the mesa and buried in the mesa? How can metal that doesn't fit a box of any metals that have been discovered be pulled out of there? And that's what he's shown. And also he did expand on some of the other, just the depth of history with the archaeology there, that people are gravitating to this site. And there's no reason for them to gravitate there. It's not like by this massive, it's just over history. There's no reason people should keep coming there, but they do. Or, as he said, in maybe your case, they see things in the sky when they're measuring the sky or underground. That's what they see. Other people walk around the homesteads and maybe see an entity or entities or shadow figures or have this visceral reaction. And Caleb, I said, well, you're kind of the middle ground here. You're the everyman in a way with a function there, but you're not an archaeologist. You're not a technologist. And he described, him and Travis having this crazy at night, almost rectangular glowing thing when he put his gun on it and it takes off, and him seeing a cloaked craft in the sky with the birds being warped when they went behind it like a funhouse mirror. So I think there's something to it, but like you said, what is it to it, right? Like, what's the rhyme or reason behind it? Who knows? And the other thing I was going to mention too is it came to mind when you were talking about GPS was not only on the ranch, but when you did Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, I think there was an episode. Was it Colorado and that couple that had the
the Miller Ranch?
Yeah, the Miller Ranch. So you had findings that were, I think, was it the bridge or was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, how the parallels, the findings on the ranch.
God, I'm glad thank you for bringing that up, because it's an obvious question I get is, have you ever seen these type of returns before? Yes, once at Miller Ranch in southern Colorado. So there's a bridge there Pretty sure it's Highway 350. It's aptly named. This bridge goes across the Purgatory River. And the history of the bridge is there's been an extraordinary number of fatal accidents on this bridge going back like 80 years. And there's this really sweet couple, the Millers, who basically own the property in and around the bridge, who basically said, hey, come bring your stuff and, let's try to get some answers. And of course, the production company, the Beyond Skinwalker folks say, yeah, let's go. So, yeah, I saw return. It's the only other place where I've seen returns underground. No. And the photogrammetric results were just bizarre. Just a mess. I mean, the model looked like a Picasso. It just didn't make any sense at all. And then, oh my gosh, and again, I can just hear the debunkers just, anyway, we're at the Miller's home on their ranch, which is, a quarter mile from the bridge. And we're doing the data review, and it's organic. It's real. It's just like the Skinwalker Ranch. There's no script. Nobody says, hey, Pete, here's your line. It is organic. It's real. The cameras are rolling. You get it in basically real time. Anyway, and I set up my laptop. The Millers are sitting next to me. And I'm going, okay, I'm dying to show you the LiDAR. And as soon as I said the word LiDAR, the lights in their house go off. And you hear the crew and the director and everybody sort of freaking out. What, did that just happen? It was, okay, again, could it be coincidence? Sure, of course, we have to consider that. But that was just crazy. I want to say it happened a second time as well.
It did.
It might not.
I watched
it. Did?
It did on the episode. It did.
Okay. Because I remember I just remember, what? Yeah, that was that, and that's a crazy place. And yeah, I will tell your viewers, please be kind to the Millers, because it's a state highway. It's not fenced. There's not security. Anybody can go there, but just don't go knock on their door. They're really sweet people.
They really are. And I saw years ago the Millers talking about their experiences where he went to lay down on his bed, and listen, if you see them, they're salt of the earth. I mean, you see them, and you could just tell there is zero motivation from these people to say anything. And his bed starts shaking like there was an earthquake, and these two red orbs come up to his window, and they also had the cattle mutilations.
Yep.
And this isn't something that happened like we had this one incident. It's an ongoing thing with them, and they've still been trying to get to the bottom of it. But the most comprehensive technology investigation was when you went out there. And so I was excited to watch that, and I was freaked out not only by the findings you had under that bridge. And this bridge, they test what may be causing people to have all these fatal accidents, but it's not like there was 3. It was like dozens. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. And then the lights, when you're in there and hearing a little panicky production team, because it kept happening, and it happened in moments when you'd say something and all of a sudden a light would go out. And it wasn't like, oh, the lights just dimmed and flickered and went out. They were like randomly popping out. Yeah. So it was wild. Wild.
Yeah, it was wild. And I'll interject a selfish desire of mine. How cool would it be? This is not a promise. This is not violating an NDA. This is just, wouldn't it be cool if we could do an experiment at Skinwalker Ranch and at Miller Ranch at the same time?
Yeah.
And, have teams basically to take, what we're doing at Skinwalker and, take it on the road. I mean, kind of like the Beyond Skinwalker folks have done, but I'm sad to say I heard a rumor. I don't know whether this is true. I heard a rumor that Beyond is not going to be renewed this year. Actually, Brandon mentioned that on an insider webinar just last week, I think. But I heard that, and I wanted to say to Brandon, like, well, let's take this on the road.
Yeah.
Let's do an experiment at Miller at Skinwalker at the same time. We've got good Wi-Fi. Wouldn't that be interesting? So
I think that would be awesome. And someday, I don't know, I've got a location near Mount Shasta. And so just so you know, I've done some films, and I've done a lot of crazy places, a conjuring house, Indian reservations in the Midwest. And I was introduced to somebody who I'm going to have on the show next week. That's a researcher that knew Stanton Friedman, who was since passed, and Kathleen Martin. Talked to this lady who has, I think it's like 400 acres outside of Mount Shasta. Beautiful property. And it's generational. And she's late 70s, so if we're going to do it, I have to do it at some point. But her father, when they were young, and mother were just building out there. And they would talk about hiding their food up in trees because something would be stomping around that literally shook the ground. Almost like a Bigfoot type thing. And if you look, I've got an aerial picture of the house, and they always said, oh, there's these petroglyphs or whatever. And in my mind, I'm thinking of a painting on a rock. No, it's like the one at Skinwalker. It's an ancient Indian one that's like 20 by 20 right across from the house. And of all the things she talked about, some of the more anomalous ones were like Skinwalker. Things were going really weird. She grabs the kids. She drives into town, little town. She goes into a restaurant, and it's open, but there's nobody in there. She goes to the bathroom with the kids, leaves, and then when she leaves, the room's full of people from a different time period, not like 1920s, but maybe just a different what they're dressing, and they don't see them. They're not acknowledged. The people won't acknowledge them, but they talk about time slips, craft, all these things that, there's got to be other areas, right? And I think if you did investigations where you tied into the ranch and that parallel at the same time would be actually amazing.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that at some point.
Well, hey James, put it together. I'll show up.
Yeah, listen, and I've got Jim Segala with his MUPAS device. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
Okay,
no.
He was the first season as a chief scientist on the show, but Jim is a scientist, and he's created a device that would be very beneficial in tracking multiple locations at the same time, and he's got them all over the world now. So at some point we'll have to put a band together.
I'm in. If it leads to some clarity, I'm all for that.
So, and I before we wrap, I wanted to ask a couple things. First, you've been there 6 years now. You described the entry point where you're the eye-rolling skeptic. How would you say you've changed in the 6 years as far as even your belief system, who you are, and what you're about?
Well, I believe that being humbled is a really healthy experience, because humility isn't exactly in vogue, right?
Yeah.
So this is hard for me because my faith is just that. It's mine. It's deeply personal. So that's where my head goes. I think being humbled, being confronted with no explanation. It's kind of what I touched on a little while ago. What are you going to do with that personally? How are you going to react to that? So how can that not open your mind, right? How can that not, it touches on, is this all there is? Is everything explainable? Is everything, is science, all is cracked up to be, what else might there be? I actually have grown to love that. Earlier, I guess in my career, my life, I've always loved disruptive science, meaning some breakthrough, some discovery happens, and the narrative changes, like 90 degrees. I love when that happens. Like way back when I was in college, it was just assumed that the dinosaurs went extinct because of climate change. Well, then they find the meteor impact in the Yucatan Peninsula and everything changes. I love when that happens. But I've grown to love that's not necessarily required, right? To be open to other possibilities, if I can put it that way. It's just how can you not be humbled? How can your mind not be opened? How can you not say, I don't care how crazy your theory is, you have my attention.
Sure.
That's how it's changed me. I'm willing. I'm leaning in, right? I'm not. Doors don't slam shut in me due to arrogance or I think I've got it all figured out or whatever. It's just that place has humbled me, and I'm frankly grateful. It's been a good experience, and it continues to just sort of don't go there. I'll humble you again. You better take a few steps back, take a few breaths, and it's great. And it's also hanging with the guys, again, I can't speak for everybody else, but there's, we talk about, we dance around this conversation that I'm struggling with right now a lot.
Okay.
And, it's amazing to have kind of a support group like that because,
Sure.
Here we are, chasing stuff we can't explain. Thank God there's the camaraderie. I'm so fortunate to have these guys, to be going through this with them, because I can't imagine going through it by myself or, so I hope that answers your
No,
question.
it does. It sounds like a shift in perception on what's possible, where before you came in saying preconceived notions in certain areas of science, I know what's possible. And it's like this bucks the whole system. Okay. Last thing I want to ask you, as far as personally, you mentioned earlier when I said the what do you think you're dealing with, and the what you answered with time, and I love the answer, very compelling. So when we're talking about the mechanics of what may be happening there, your final thoughts on who do you think you're dealing with there? An intelligence? What's your personal thoughts on who you're dealing with out there?
There are times when it feels like a who. We do something and then the spectrum analyzer goes off. It almost feels like the kid's game of telephone. It almost feels like somebody's trying, like interaction. And, that's, wow, wouldn't that be amazing, right? Amazing. It would change everything. So, and, I told you a few minutes ago that, I've been out there by myself just screaming at the sky, hoping something evoke a response. Because so much of what goes on at the ranch is trying to do exactly that. I just remember being out there by myself and said, well, what if I'll say something nice. I'll say something not so nice, whatever. I've tried all kinds of things. So, that's clear evidence that for me personally, wouldn't it be great if it was a who? Wouldn't it be great, wild speculation that time is involved and, the former military guy, I can't remember his name, Alexander,
John
Colonel
Alexander.
Yeah, he looks right at the camera and, they ask him, so what's going on at the ranch? And he doesn't even blink. He goes, it's a portal. Wow. Okay. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, this guy needs to he needs to up his meds. But, 6 years later, I'm going, okay. But wouldn't that be great if it's someone is knocking on the door and the other can't answer or can't find the doorknob? I mean, whatever. So I sure there's a part of me that would just absolutely welcome a who that would just talk about disruptive science or just disruption in general. Bring that. Let's go. I think a lot of us would just love that, welcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with all that's going on, stay tuned is the best, I guess, we could tell anybody, right? Stay tuned. So lastly, you can close this out. Anything you tell the viewers, I know the new season's coming up, and anything you've got going on personally with websites or, this is your chance to do a little self-promotion if you want to, that we could point you to. Yeah.
Well, my website is vctolabs.com. That's Victor Charlie Tango Oscar labs.com. I've got a calendar, page up there that tells where I am and what I'll be doing. In terms of season 7, buckle up.
Okay.
It's well, come on, Jan Franke, Chris Roberts. Oh my gosh, I have to be careful, but it's actual discovery. I'll just put it like that.
Okay. Like it.
Your folks are going to see some things that just will be worth your while. Let's put it that way. It's exciting. It's every morning I wake up and hope there's going to be something in my feed or in my inbox saying season 7, is going to debut the first week of June or whatever, but we don't know yet.
Yeah.
This is that agonizing time of year when we wait, which isn't my best skill. So just season 7 will not disappoint. Anybody who knows the show knows that, if you looked at the seasons on a graph, to me, it just keeps getting more compelling as the team, zeroes in on the scent. I don't know how else to put it. The trail, right? The path to discovery. It's exciting stuff. You won't be disappointed.
Awesome. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough. I could sit here literally all day and talk with you. So we want to have you back. I've gotten a number of folks that have been gracious enough to come on the show, and it's interesting to hear everybody's different perspective from what they do. But everybody stay tuned. I think it'll be May or June. I'm pretty confident it'll come out then, and fingers crossed. But listen, thank you for your time, and we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Great. Thanks so much, James. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks, Pete.